Good afternoon and welcome back to this week's latest edition of Cult Classics TV series, where we look back on iconic TV series which span generations. The decade this month we're choosing is the 80s and the 70s, and one of the smash hit TV sort of comedy adventures TV series of that time was the Dukes of Hazzard. Iconic sort of show, 7 seasons, more than nearly up on 100 episodes, 25 episodes a season, and we're speaking to numerous guest stars who have made an appearance on the Dukes of Hazzard. And this week we're delighted to be joined by the one and only Audrey Landers, who guest starred in 2 episodes of the Dukes of Hazzard. She first appeared on March the 14th, 1980, playing Gail Flatt, the daughter of Henry Flatt, in the episode R.I.P. Henry Flatt. And the second episode she appeared in was No More Mr. Nice Guy, which aired on October the 19th, 1984, season 7, episode 5, where she appeared as Billie Jean. Audrey, first of all, delighted to have you on. And I suppose Dukes of Hazzard, Audrey Landers, would you say that sort of rings a bell in people's mind, or does people say, wait, Audrey Landers, did you appear in the Dukes of Hazzard?
Well, I guess most people do remember me from my long run on Dallas.
Yeah.
But I was very fortunate to have had the opportunity to do guest starring roles in many episodics, and as you mentioned, 2 guest starring roles in the Dukes of Hazzard. And they were at very different points in my career as well. So it was certainly a lot of fun.
And Audrey, 1980, I imagine that was probably one of your first gigs or your first acting sort of jobs in the industry as such. How did that sort of opportunity come about for you as such? And were you lucky enough to land the role? Was there competition for it?
Well, a couple of things.
Okay.
First of all, it was not actually one of my first roles. I was a child actor, and so for all through my teens and even through college, I played on daytime drama, an ongoing TV series, 2 different ones, as a matter of fact. So by 1980, I had done numerous pilots already in Los Angeles and several other guest starring roles, but I hadn't yet gotten Dallas. The Dukes of Hazzard, getting that role was really a coup for me, I felt at the time, because I was not a regular on a TV series yet, and quite often the guest stars were from ongoing series. So I felt really lucky, and yes, there was always a lot of competition for every role. So it was good fortune for me.
And Audrey, the Dukes of Hazzard, obviously that was its second season. It really had caught on, and as we know, it became a phenomenon in the United States, especially in Central America. It's the central of the America, as sort of North America, as such. The central states, there we call it, sort of as a real sort of cult following. But by season 2, it really had on cable TV across the states, it really had a sort of a big sort of following. And towards the 80s, I imagine if you landed a role on either Dukes of Hazzard, the A-Team, or Kojak, they were probably the 3 big series at the time in terms of TV sort of comedies type sort of series as such. So I imagine that was a big gig for you and a big sort of coup, as you said, in your feather.
It was a lot of fun. During that same period of time, in the early 80s especially, I don't know if you were familiar with Fantasy Island and Love Boat, and they were very, very popular shows as well. And so, but the Dukes of Hazzard was probably one of the earliest guest appearances I made. That and maybe a Fantasy Island before I had gotten Dallas.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose, Audrey, we see you on the Dukes of Hazzard for the very first time, and you're doing, let's say, flips on a sort of a bar in terms of a gym, and that's the first introduction to your character, Gail Flatt. And were you always, growing up, had you a bit of an acrobatic sort of background?
Not too much, but I sort of was able to do whatever was necessary for the role. I've always been a dancer and somewhat athletic, but not necessarily a gymnast. However, the moves weren't too difficult and I was able to master them.
And Audrey, we know all about the stunts team in the Dukes of Hazzard. It's iconic in terms of those car chases, those sort of famous sort of car chases, which sort of captivated audience. And being on set and experiencing that, and obviously you got to see some of those up close. Obviously, cut scenes as well. You were obviously in the Dukes of Hazzard sort of car as well with Luke and with Luke and Bo, Tom Wopat, and sort of John Schneider, obviously before the stunt doubles. And did you have a stunt double for that scene, I imagine, as well?
I'm trying to remember if I did, but since if it was a difficult stunt, I'm sure I had a stunt double. Yeah, I wasn't a proficient gymnast.
And what was your memories? Did you get to see any of those iconic car chases during your time in the Dukes of Hazzard?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in between my own scenes, I was always, I was on the set, and we were quite often on locations, and there were other scenes filming in between the scenes I was in. So it was very exciting to watch the stunts, and especially the car stunts.
And obviously, there's a strong sort of female presence in the Dukes of Hazzard as well. We all know Catherine Bake, who played sort of Daisy Duke. And obviously, you had sort of two encounters with Catherine. The first time, a sort of a friendship, sort of a young sort of adolescent girl. And then the other one, you were obviously mortal sort of enemies and sort of such. What are your memories for the first time meeting Catherine Bake, and obviously your discussions and any good stories to tell?
I think, as with any show, if you're the guest, you are coming on to a set of an established group who are very tight knit. And so there's always that moment of the initial intimidation. And of course, I felt that coming on to the show. It was, and very soon after I got on the set and I met everyone, it dissipated immediately. They were a lot of fun to be with. They were kind, they were generous as actors, and it was a very easygoing cast to be around. And Catherine Bach was terrific. She was just wonderful.
And Audrey, obviously it made an impression for you, because obviously then 4 years later you were back again on the Dukes of Hazzard in another sort of role, No More Mr. Nice Guy, where this time you sort of played the central sort of role, the sort of villain role, Billie Jean. I imagine of the two episodes, this was probably your favorite one, playing this sort of character, because this character was prime and sort of centered on the sort of show. And obviously she was a fierce woman. She had her two henchmen as well working beside her. So I imagine this role was probably more to your cup of tea. Would that be fair to say?
I don't know. I mean, I love both of the roles, but certainly it was a lot of fun playing the bad girl. I always enjoyed playing, even on Dallas, when as my character first came on the show, she was sort of the bad girl too. And it's always a lot of fun playing a character that is multidimensional like that.
And I suppose we get to see all types of your acting sort of traits on that sort of show as well, in terms of, we see you first of all giving away a car to Daisy Duke and sort of stuff, and then we see you conniving against Sarah Buck's character, Boss Hogg, and sort of such, and obviously then commanding your two henchmen, John Mashak, who played Stoney, and Jan Eddy, who played Zach as well. So you always got to see that this was a woman that was very much an authoritarian sort of figure. She liked that sort of power as well, and holding power in both her hands.
You're absolutely right. And when you think about it, it was really ahead of its time to write a character like that, because in the 80s, I don't think women were ever were thought of as leaders or powerful or empowered, so to speak. And I think that although she wasn't a good character, it was a little bit ahead of its time to make the villain the female.
And Audrey, how did the opportunity come about? Were you contacted by your agent to say, listen, the Dukes of Hazzard want you back again for a guest role? They got something in mind. And obviously, with your experience, was the first time was you like, yeah, I want to see what that's about again?
Absolutely. That's pretty much the way it works.
Mm.
The casting office would contact my agent, and they contacted me. And then, of course, I was working on Dallas as a series regular, so they would have to coordinate schedules with my production, and they were wonderful and accommodating at both shows, both on Dallas and Dukes. And it worked in the schedule, and it was a lot of fun.
And Audrey, walking back onto the set for the second time and seeing John Schneider and Tom Mopat and Denver Booker again, was there awful giggles or awful laughs and like, oh, guess who walks in the door? Guess she's back again, the sort of scenario. Wait, what are you doing here? Sort of stuff in terms of seeing you arrive back again after 4 years, or were they taken by surprise when they found out?
I think they probably were surprised because I don't know if the cast had been informed ahead of time, but we had worked together over the last few years on other network television shows. For example, there were sports competition shows called Battle of the Network Stars.
Okay.
And so we had seen one another, and we had been in touch here and there for publicity events, but certainly walking back onto the set was a surprise for all.
And Audrey, obviously, we're all familiar with your role in Dallas, and that's a sort of a serious sort of drama as such. Did you like getting those sort of breaks to go out and pursue light-hearted comedy like the Dukes of Hazzard? Was it sort of a refreshing to sort of play those roles in terms of Dallas, which is probably more a sort of a serious sort of tone to it?
Absolutely, yes. It was so much fun to be able to, stretch my acting chops a little bit more, and it's kind of like a breath of fresh air, doing something that's totally different than the character I had been playing, and I felt fortunate to be able to do that because it's fun to do a role that's a little out of what the public perception is.
Yeah.
And for example, I was able to do, I don't know if you are familiar with the movie A Chorus Line, which I was also able to do and break out of the mold of my character on Dallas to do that film. And then fortunate enough to be able to go back onto the set of Dallas and resume my role there. So I feel very lucky throughout my career that I've been able to do other roles and to not have been typecast.
And Audrey, lastly, before I let you go, obviously COVID pandemic means that everyone is stationed to their homes and sort of locked down. But throughout your career, just out of curiosity, have you ever traveled to the Emerald Isle? Have you ever been to Ireland? And if so, what were your memories, or is it something still very much on the bucket list?
It's definitely on my bucket list. I have been to Europe many times over the years because I have a very successful recording career in many countries. And so over the years, I've been to Europe, but only through Ireland in maybe a layover.
Okay.
So I would love to go. Other family members have gone to Ireland, for example, for golfing vacations,
Okay.
but I wasn't included. So hopefully that will happen once the world opens up again.
On that note, Audrey Landers, a pleasure talking to you today to relive your time on the Dukes of Hazzard, your two guest starring roles. First role, you appeared in 1980, season 2, episode 22, R.I.P. Henry Flatt. You played the character Gail Flatt, his daughter. And your second episode, where you appeared on October the 19th, 1984, season 7, episode 5, No More Mr. Nice Guy, where you played the character Billie Jean. Audrey, a pleasure talking to you today, and looks like a very sunny day outside there in Florida, so we'll let you go outside and enjoy the sunshine and get a few rays.
Well, thank you.
Take
Nice
care.
talking to you. Bye.